All right, guys, we're going to go through these science released questions. A fungus is found growing on dead leaves on the forest floor. The fungus is an example of a decomposer. A carnivore is a meat eater. A predator is someone who hunts. And a producer is like a plant that produces their own food. Based on the table, how much rainfall should a scientist have predicted for May 2011 in Norfolk? So we have the Norfolk monthly rainfall in Norfolk in inches, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011. So every year in May, it goes up. So we can predict that it's probably going to be between 21 and 26 based on what the chart is saying. Which of these best explains why the sun is not visible during the night? The moon blocks the sun from view. The side of the sun faces away from the earth. The sun stops creating light at night, or that side of the earth faces away from the sun. So it would have to be that we face away from the sun, and that's why we can't see the sun anymore. What kind of plate boundary occurs when this happens, a sliding plate boundary? That would be when earthquakes occur. So here we're looking at a scale, and you have a rock right here. We want to know how much the mass of the rock is. So you would just have to add those up. So we have 1, 2, 3. So those are 30, 35, 36, 37. And then you just type in 37. Okay. During pollination, pollen is transferred from a stamen to a what? So it's transferred from a stamen to the stigma. Which of these is an impact made by humans? Marble being dug from a rock quarry, marble forming from sedimentary rocks, oceans dying and exposing limestone, drying, limestone forming from shells of ocean animals. So the only thing that we do on these examples is digging up the marble. Lobster pots are used by fishermen to catch lobsters in shallow water. In which area of the ocean would commercial fishermen most likely place their lobster pots? So if they are in shallow water, we would want the continental shelf. The best way to measure a runner that they covered in 30 seconds would probably be meters. Which direction is the ball most likely going to go after it hits the wall? So if you hit it up on the wall right here, it's probably going to go back down this way. So here he's going to label. So pointing to this phase, melting and cooling, that's going to be igneous. Heat and pressure is right here, so that's going to be metamorphic. And then sedimentary is erosion and compaction. So those two are pointing to that. So make sure that you're paying attention to what's being pointed. Which cell part is necessary for producing food? That is the chloroplast. That is one of the difference between plants and animal cells. One way in which light waves are different from sound waves. Light waves can move through empty space. Remember, sound cannot travel in a vacuum. Sound cannot travel in space because it has to have matter to bounce off of. Which material will correctly complete the chart? So compounds, carbon dioxide, sugar. So compounds are, when two or more things come together to make something. Salt is made of two different hydrogen. It's made up of two different types of atoms. So salt is the compound here. A student rubbed a plastic cone with a piece of wool cloth and placed the cone near the stream of water. The water bent towards the cone because of static electricity. Which plant part develops into a fruit? That is the flower. If you think about it, when you see like an apple tree, there's flowers. Those flowers turns into the fruit. Also where the seeds are. Whoops. Which of these represents a correct flow of energy based on the food web? Remember that the arrow is pointing to which way the energy is going. It's not that the horseshoe crab is eating the bass, but the horseshoe crab's energy is going to the bass. So, loggerhead turtle to the horseshoe crab to the razor clam. So no. Horseshoe crab to the loggerhead turtle to the sanderling. That could be one. The terrapin to the razor clam to the plankton. That's not. It would be the other way around. Plankton, razor, terrapin. Razor clam to the horseshoe crab to the sand. So that would be correct. So make sure you pay attention to the arrow pointing to things. When stirred together, two substances form a solution. So a solution is when two things can't come apart, and that would be sugar and water. You can get, sugar and salt, sugar and water. You can pull apart sand and water. The sand usually goes to the bottom, but the sugar will melt into the water, and then you would have to heat the water up before you can get the sugar out. The plants are most likely responding to the sun. And if you ever have a plant in a window, this happens a lot. The plants will go towards the light. The greater the frequency of a sound wave, so the more that the sound wave is moving, the higher the pitch. A student made the model showing the particles in a solid. To improve the model, the student should. So model of a solid. So remember, they should gently shake it to show how a solid, the molecules inside of a solid, gently vibrate. Which substance produced during photosynthesis is represented by the X? So remember that we breathe out carbon dioxide, all animals do, and then the tree soaks in that carbon dioxide to continue photosynthesis. And in that process, they breathe out oxygen. Which of these animals is classified as a vertebrate? Remember that a vertebrate has a backbone. So the only one here that has a backbone is a snake. Do not confuse a snake with a worm. A worm is an invertebrate. It does not have a backbone. But a snake does. These are all exoskeletons, so they have their backbones on the outside. An electromagnet can be used by making a battery with an insulated wire and an iron nail. High and low tides on the coast are caused by the gravity from the moon, gravitational pull. The plant shown grows in swamps, produces an odor similar to a skunk. Why should people preserve a plant like the skunk cabbage? It depends on a moist environment. It has a certain role in the ecosystem. It is prized by gardeners. It has leaves that are the same shape. So everything in the ecosystem that is naturally occurring has a certain role, so it needs to be preserved. Which pair of organisms need to switch for the food chain to be correct? Remember, the arrow is pointing to where the energy is flowing. So the phytoplankton does not get eaten by the shark, and the shark does not get eaten by the fish. But if we traded the white shark place and the animal-like plankton, that would be correct, because then you would have the phytoplankton, the animal-like plankton that would get eaten by the fish gets eaten by the seal, and the seal would get eaten by the white shark. So we want to change D. Students investigated how different colors of construction paper in a solar oven affect the heating of water. Which graph correctly represents the data of the brown construction paper? All right, so we have the beginning water is 20. Okay. Then the trial is 37. So they have to go up to 37. So this one goes up to 37. And then it goes down to 36 and then 32. So it would be C. So make sure you look at all of these when you're in the actual test. A student made a track for a toy sled using 4 different materials. At which section of the track is most friction most likely to occur to give more resistance? So what is harder for something to go across? Well, that would be sandpaper. So that would be 2. Which pair of colors is in order from the longest wavelength to the shortest? It would be red and violet. Red is the longest, violet is the shortest. Based on the mineral identification table, which mineral belongs in the X of the flow chart? All right, so mineral that is non-metallic luster. Okay, so metallic luster that streaks with the hardness of sticks. So see how we're picking this one that streaks with the hardness of 6. Streaks black with a hardness of 6. So it would have to be magnetite. I don't know how to say that. The conveyor belt moves the groceries by transforming electrical energy into mechanical energy. Mechanical because it's moving. Students made a classroom barometer that can be used to measure air pressure. Barometers measure air pressure. Example of behavioral adaptation. So remember that a structural is how you're made. Behavioral adaptation is how you act. A squirrel that buries acorns. The cow having flat teeth is structural. A fish having scales is structural. An owl having soft feathers, that is structural. But a squirrel hiding the acorns, that is a behavioral adaptation. Coal is important for Virginia because it can be used as energy. All right, let me know if you have questions.